Hi, I'm Ray Tanner. Coming up live on LiveWire, you are going to meet a very special person. His name is Leo McElroy. Leo McElroy, since the 1950s, has had an amazing career, and he lives in Sacramento. You're going to be able to see him on stage this coming week if you want. He's been a journalist, a news reporter, a TV host, an actor, and he has now written plays, and he's also done a fabulous job with a radio drama group. Coming up on LiveWire right after this. Hi, Leo. How are you doing today? Come on the air.
Ray, I'm doing fine. How are you?
Great. Thanks for coming because it's so important. I think it's to talk to somebody who has a wealth of history, knowing and being part of the whole 20th century development of television and radio, and being part of programs and knowing stars. And talking with them and getting a real sense. I mean, did Carl Reiner really call you the funniest man in the world? Really?
You know, he really did, and I got in trouble for it. I was doing an interview with him for Voice of America, and I was ushered into his office. He was sitting at his desk, not looking up, and the publicity guy said, well, here he is. And he said, oh, wait, go sit over here beside me at the corner of the desk. And he didn't look up. He didn't say hello, didn't say a word, just worked on. Finally said, without looking up, he said, okay, go ahead and start the tape. So I punched my button and I said, for Voice of America in Los Angeles, California, this is Leo McElroy. And he looks up, he says, Leo McElroy, you do that morning show on KFI. My God, you are the funniest man in the world. And I was so shocked. I just didn't say, oh, go on with the interview. And I said, okay. So I restarted the interview. And you know, at the end of it, I sent the tape in to Washington, where all my tapes went, DC. And they called back and said, okay, we understand you're a big star, but you don't have to send us the damn commercials anymore.
Oh, what a wonderful experience. And you have your book, by the way, I have to show you, I've read it. Your book has stories in there like that throughout your entire career, and also some very sad stories like the one on the cover. This is your radio reporting in the early 50s, I think, a major air crash in San Diego, right?
Yeah, no, actually, that was a TV report. That was the Pan Am crash in San Diego. That was the one where we hijacked an airplane to get there.
I see. Okay. Ouch.
We had a plane chartered to take me and my camera crew down there, and we were waiting at the airport. And this lady in a pilot's costume came running up and said, "Are you the NBC crew going to San Diego?" Well, we were ABC, but I said, "Yeah."
BC was okay.
And we got in the airplane and we took off and we're flying and we're very friendly and everything's fine. And suddenly she gets a radio call and they said, the NBC crew says they're waiting for you here on the ground. And she turned to me and says, is there anything we should know? And I said, yeah, we're ABC. And she said, okay, well, they can have your plane. We're going. And we went.
Oh, that's so good. You went. Oh, God. Well, those kinds of experiences are just so a pleasure to hear and enjoy, I must say. How is it, were you born to be a journalist, a television host? Or how did that all come about? I mean,
oh, no.
Not everybody can even speak in front of the radio or television.
I had a clear ambition, Ray. I knew from being a little kid exactly what I wanted to do. I was going to be a cartoonist.
Oh,
That was what I was born to be, was a cartoonist. And all the way through high school, I drew these cartoons that went up on the bulletin board about, beat the Crusaders and
oh yeah.
guys and beat those guys and school spirit and all that stuff. I did that. I knew that was what I needed to do. But in summer, I needed to get a job somewhere, and somebody gave me a letter of introduction to the sports director at the daily newspaper in LA, the LA Herald Express, an afternoon paper. And I went there to talk to the sports guy, but he was always on the phone and was never available. This lady across the room said, what are you doing? I said, I'm waiting to talk to him. Why? I want a job. What, you want to work in toy section or you want to work in news? And I said, news, ma'am. And she said, well, get over here. And I handed me a news story, a rough copy, and said, here, take that typewriter and turn this crap into a news story. So I did. I could write. And I did, and I handed it back, and she said, well, that's no worse than any of the other crap I get around this place. Okay, you're hired. And
I bet you
this was my introduction to journalism.
My God, that sent you on your way. Amazing experience.
And then broadcasting came after that because a friend of mine, when I went into college, was working at the college radio station, and he talked me into doing it, and that was fun too. So,
and then all of a sudden, right at the end of this long career of television, TV, radio, and you become a political consultant.
Yeah,
a non-biased. What are the terminology? Non-biased or non?
I was nonpartisan. I was the only. Somebody said one presidential campaign that I did said that I was the only major nonpartisan political consultant in the United States.
Wow! And also the funniest man.
People that, didn't know who they were going to hire. I was getting them. I had, some Republicans and some Democrats and libertarians and two long election cycles with Ross Perot.
Oh, Ross Perot.
Yeah, the last time I saw Ross, I was no longer working with him, and he was no longer running for president. And he did a speech in Sacramento, and I went up afterward and said, Ross, hey, how are you? And he looked at me. He said, okay, this time was I grumpy or not?
Yes. You were giving him.
You weren't grumpy.
You weren't grumpy. Oh, good. Because he had a kind of a grumpy attitude towards.
He did. That was Ross. That's the way the guy was.
He had to live to be what he was.
Yeah.
But it's so amazing. And then you were walking down the street one day after all of that political consulting. And I must say, if you read your book, you went through, I don't know how many governors doing that, but you certainly had an impact on them. And they would call you, like Jerry Brown would call you into his office, or you'd run into him and totally interact with him on one-on-one basis.
Yeah. I know. I had Pat Brown, I had Reagan, I had Jerry Brown, and on and on. And
on and on. Then one day you said, I think I'll write a play. Is that what happened? It's amazing.
No,
that's a jump.
Actually, long before that, I was in the Air Force, just out of college, a young lieutenant learning to be a communications officer. But living in town because they ran out of room in the officers' quarters. And I had a dream one night, and I woke up with this vivid dream about Shakespeare's days and a bunch of guys hanging around a tavern griping about the way life was. And I thought that was kind of fun, and I grabbed a gin rummy score pad off the table and wrote it in the dark. Wrote it down. I got up in the morning and looked at it and thought, well, when I get out of service, I got to write this thing. And 2 weeks later, I'm walking back from a movie in town with my roommate, my buddy, and I'm humming something. And he said, what's that you're humming? And I said, it's the song from that movie we just saw, the Doris Day movie?" And he said, "No, it's not." And I listened to it, and it had lyrics, and the lyrics were kind of Shakespearean. And I realized it was the opening song of Mermaid Tavern, my musical.
That's a
And that
wonderful.
musical wrote itself in my head in about 2 weeks. Music, dialogue, everything.
That's a very interesting statement about that, because throughout literature, you can you can read about people who have that all of a sudden they are the transference of these ideas. And they almost say to them, some of them say, it's not them, it's just this thoughts that kept bombarding me. And I had to put them on paper. And then I started to make them into a form, and then the form became a play, and it's so they get just driven by that concept.
Exactly, Ray. What's scary is there were things in that play that I knew were wrong. I mean, I just knew that, my God, I can't kill Christopher Marlowe in a tavern. I mean, Christopher Marlowe is a famous poet. I can't kill him in a tavern brawl. I can't just do that. I can't just have these guys all solve their debt problems by picking up and doing a theater tour to Scotland. That's just so phony. That's just so ridiculous. Except for the fact that Christopher Marlowe died in a tavern brawl.
Yeah, he did.
That same year, they all picked up and went to
Scotland
on a theater tour. And I didn't find that out until years later. Later, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Long after I wrote it.
So amazing that you have this thing happen. Yeah, and a lot of people actually do come up with those, and then they find later that what they had been given to hear actually happened.
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah. It's amazing, and what you hope is you go with the flow and you listen to what's talking inside your head, because it knows a lot more than you think it does.
It's really amazing. So tell me about the show that you're doing now. You're doing a radio drama.
Yeah, this is going to be really interesting because we are taking back some of the drama from the days when radio really took drama into your living room. And remember, in the TV days, no, that wasn't happening yet. Mm-hmm. Radio was the only way that you could have real drama come right into your room and present itself to you. And shows like Suspense, just, Arch Obler's show, wonderful programming that just reached out and grabbed you and said, "Listen here, buddy. And oh, by the way, I got a commercial for you to listen to."
That's right.
And it was the commercials that paved the way for that brand of drama to get into people's homes and to accustom them to something that later translated into the desire for television and for series and for ongoing engagement with the arts. Time that otherwise they would have been spending doing crossword puzzles.
Absolutely right. And knowing people that have helped make that jump, I knew a director who worked on Elizabeth Barrymore Presents, and also Henry Aldrich. These were radio programs. He was the director, and then when television came in, he was like, "Oh, you're going to do television now," and he ended up doing a number of series. They almost were basically stealing from the topics and the scripts and just rewriting them with the visuals.
But it's interesting. Some shows were so strong in the imagination that they couldn't translate into television.
Oh, that's right.
They were so vivid and so engaging that television wasn't good enough to do them. Radio could get into your head and give you those images. And for TV, it took a long time to get to the point where they had the ability to fire you up the way radio did.
Yeah. My two older brothers, they were more, but one's 10 years older, the other was 5 years older. But they tell me about that transition that they made with the television, and it was hard for them to get into television. In fact, my father used to argue with me. You know, he would say, "You love these," and he would name 3 or 4 radio programs. And so, why don't you just stay with those? I don't want to have to buy a television; they're too expensive. Blah blah blah. And 6 months later, we had a Muntz TV by Madman Muntz in Chicago. And we were watching Kate Smith go, "When the Moon Comes Over the Mountain," which was some of the first talk shows, you know, on the air. Great stuff.
One of my best friends was on one of those shows. She was the ingenue, an actress named Gloria McMillan was the ingenue on Our Miss Brooks with Eve Arden.
Oh God, yes.
And that show, unlike many of them, successfully made the transition from radio over to TV. And those people were so good. Richard Crenna and Gloria and Eve Arden were so good that they could make that transition and sell those characters on camera.
Yeah, you're right. I remember seeing that. She had a look. She would turn to the camera and look like, "Oh, what I got into trouble now."
It had repercussions for me, though, because Gloria told me once that her mother would not let her go out with me because the radio show that I was doing, a drama series on another station, was on opposite Our Miss Brooks and was cutting into their ratings. And she said, "You know, we're good friends, but I can't ever go out with you because my mom says you're hurting my ratings."
Oh, wow. I love it. Oh, that's a really good story. That should be in a nice film. So let's go back to these radio dramas now.
Right.
I guess the radio dramas are being adapted, and you do them live on stage in front of an audience. Is that right?
This is the challenge: is the audience gets the opportunity to really operate their imaginations inside their head the way they did when listening to radio. Because for those of us there, we are actors, quite clearly actors, standing in front of microphones with a sound effect system off to the side, with music being played. You know, all the elements are on the air with us, and what they see is the work that goes into creating that sound masterpiece that is the final drama.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. We've got some slides here. Let's have a look at the next one.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, there. That's an outdoor theater at the California Stage.
Yeah, which is a lovely place to do it, by the way. In the evening, the air there is just gorgeous, and you can sit there and watch the stage, and the combination of that and the ambiance is just incredible.
And there you are doing a play with other people.
That's right, and this is the wonderful juggling is you're at a microphone, you are acting into the microphone, and yet at the same time, because we are actors and we are people and we do know the characters, we're also responding to each other. And you know, it's not just me standing there with a piece of paper in front of me reading lines into a microphone. I'm actually looking over at the actors I'm talking to. I really am, and they're looking at me, and we're working with each other because we are actors, and what we do.
This is good. So the two shows are interesting plays because they're very different. One is a very broad show. Here you are, and there you are. All good. Oh, and there's the sound engineer on the left. So we see the whole thing in front of us.
Yeah, which is really fun because it's so much a part of radio. I mean, I know because my first radio show, I broke in as being the sound guy. And so you get to see the sound effects created, you get to see the music put in, you get to see the interplay between the actors, the director, the sound people, the music people. I mean, this is a symphony orchestra doing something.
So when
Uh,
is this, and where is it?
let's
When
see.
is this program? Oh,
Oh, the
wait a
program
minute. Who's
is
that? Is
coming up Saturday night. I'm sorry, Sunday night, and it's at 7 o'clock. Audience in 7. Oh, that picture you just
there?
did
It
there,
is.
that was different.
Yep, there
That
it
picture,
is.
yeah. There's the man who knew how. Two radio programs coming on. Audience in at 7. We will start the production about 7:30. It gives people time to relax and chat a little bit with each other and get used to the concept. And they're going to see two very different dramas. One very intense and one very not intense. Uh, somewhat somewhat more than tongue in cheek, perhaps several tongues in several cheeks. That's it.
I know I know what you're talking about. I think. Can we go back to the other previous picture? We didn't talk about that. That looked. What is that?
That is college radio and me directing a radio drama with a cast of we're about 8, 9 people in that. That was from a series called Highway of Time, which I wrote and directed, that
Whoa.
ran for several years uh, on not only on this radio station, but somebody told me for 10, 12 years on a number of other radio stations. It just kept running and running and running. But it was science fiction
Oh,
and
science fiction.
shows that I had written, adapted from science fiction stories, and produced. And we had some really, really good and really famous actors later doing that. They weren't famous when we did them, but they were famous later.
Golly, Leo, that sounds like a really fun show. And it is an interesting thing because that is what started you in writing. I guess you just had to get out the stories.
It really was, the compulsion to write is fascinating. I think that was my first time of just getting the feeling of I'm reading this story. This story would work on radio. I've got to write it. I've got to write it. I've got to write it. And I did, and amazingly, it worked, and it continued to work throughout the entire series. It was just
Now you're
great
part of a what
fun.
fun. Yeah, I like that. That is a good thing. You also have another fun project. I'll go down the list now. It's a playwrights organization that you're part of.
Playwrights Collaborative is something that we started more than 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And the idea was that for people who are writing, don't get the chance to have their work done and read by really good actors, and B, evaluated by people who really will do a sincere, intelligent evaluation. And
Mhm.
so our entire purpose of this was, that's my wife in the background, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. Good.
Our entire purpose of this was to provide that kind of feedback to actors. And so what they do, they submit scripts to us. If the script is looked at by several competent people and considered to be good enough that it's worth a reading, then we schedule it. And once a month, we will read perhaps one long play, perhaps 2, 3, 4 short plays. Um, and then the audience, which is largely composed of playwrights, actors, producers,
Hmm.
will sit there and say, okay, I like that part, but that part didn't work. And somebody else say, no, that part worked, but that part didn't work. A lot of feedback to the actors from people who know what they're talking about. And then it's up to the playwright to take that evaluation and say, um, uh, I'm going to take that advice and I'm going to forget that advice.
Hey, right. Yeah, that's true. And that's important too. That playwrights really have to understand that if you've given you something that is like totally against the direction that you have in mind, everybody has their own imagination, and they can't tell you to rewrite what you really have to write.
Right, absolutely. And we have a lot of cases where people will come back with plays. Two of my plays are going to be read. We do it now on Zoom. Are going to be read in front of an audience on Zoom next Sunday. And these are plays that I have done and done some rework on. One's a monologue that's very dark, and one is a goofy comedy, a Western version of Don Quixote called The Legend of Don Coyote.
Oh, I want to thank you so much, Leo, for being on, Leo McElroy, for being on and talking to me about this. And come back anytime when you're doing another funny thing. But I've got 1 more minute. What can we say in 1 minute?
What we can say is come see the radio drama and find out what radio drama really is made up of, because we're going to show it to you from the inside out.
Leo McElroy, you are a man of great talent. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ray.
All right. And we'll be back next week with LiveWire. So thanks for tuning in, and thank you, Leo.